Hi, everyone. Welcome to the WHRC USA chapter's training on state legislative advocacy. We're very happy to have all of you, and we're especially happy to have our presenter for the evening, Tanya Diddy, who is the Vice President of Field Operations at Concerned Women for America. She has served in that capacity since November of 2018, and in this role, she's responsible for field growth and increasing the effectiveness of CWA in the states on college campuses to carry out CWA's vision of impacting the culture through education and public policy. She's been a CWA activist for over 30 years. Before her current position as Vice President of Field Operations, Tanya served as CWA of Georgia's State Director for over 15 years, recruiting new members. Tanya is an experienced state-level policy leader with a record of effective leadership on challenging state issues. So she comes to us with a lot of expertise. We're very lucky that she's willing to share with us her information, her experiences, and her expertise in state legislative advocacy. And I will just say, for recording purposes, Tanya has given us permission to record her presentation, and we're very grateful to her for that as well. So Tanya, with that, I will hand it over to you.
Can you share your screen?
Can I share?
Am I able to share my screen on my end? I guess I am. I am. I think I can. So I believe I can, Kara. So if you'll give me 1 second, I will get my presentation running and look back through here.
If you can't for any reason, let me know and I will make you a co-host.
Okay, let me give it a shot and you tell me if you see a capital.
Yep.
Do you see it? Great. Okay. Well, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here this evening. One little side note, the camera on my computer goes in and out, so I'm going to go light and dark sometimes, so I apologize if that's a distraction. But again, Kara, thank you for the introduction. And as Kara said, I've spent some time at the state level. I'm a lobbying junkie, quite honestly. I love it all. But I didn't start that way. I'm actually an educator by trade and just stepped into state advocacy just through an education issue and found that I really liked it. Everything I know, I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks. So I've done some things right, and I did some things that I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of that one? So I hope to share with you just some very, very practical ways that you can be effective in your states. And just as, disclaimer, all states are different. Everything that runs at in the state capitals are all governed by 50 different state statutes and laws. And so because I know Georgia well, because I live there, I'm going to use it as an example, but it doesn't, but I'll try to broaden out and touch different states that I might know. But then if you have questions about your particular state, I'll try to answer those. But just know what I'm showing you and providing you is really kind of across the board, and it's just kind of adapting, what's in your state. So let me get going here. Here we go. So the goal of the training really is to equip you with strategies to do a marathon and not a sprint. My organization has been around a long time, and one thing that I've learned in my advocacy is I'm in it for the long haul, and you just can't make change overnight, unfortunately. And so some of the strategies and the practical tips I want to give you is really thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to put out a fire tomorrow, but how can I impact going down the road? And again, a lot of it is just networking and relationships. So you'll hear that. So that really is my goal, is to be able to equip you for the long haul. All right, this is very basic, but I thought I would throw that in. There's 3 branches of government, but at the state level, it's made up just a little differently, where instead of you have the president, obviously you have the governor. And the governor's critical because the governor has they have got their policies that they want to pass, their laws, they've got their programs that they want to put in place. And so they carry a lot of weight with the legislature. If the governor is of the same party as the state legislature, then I'll just use examples. If it's a Democrat governor and you've got Democrat legislature, then you might think that that might run really, really smoothly. But, you know, when you've got your legislators who have their own ideas of what they want to do, then they kind of feel beholden to have to carry, you know, what the governor wants of their own party. I think sometimes it's kind of nice to have different parties, you know, maybe one party that is governing in the executive branch and another party that's governing in the legislative branch. I think it causes a very healthy give and take. But so it depends on your state. Again, it can be good and it can be bad. But anyway, and then you've got the judicial, and the highest court in your state is going to be the Supreme Court. And just like we have the U.S. Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court can hear issues if someone files a lawsuit on some legislation that they think is not right. So, but where I'm going to focus is in the legislature. So here we go. All right, what I'm going to do is just quickly do the overview of the legislature so you know who the key power players are. You got to know the power players, and then I'm actually going to go out to the website, and if you have the PowerPoint outline in front of you, I'll refer back to this page. But and by the way, I don't believe any of these House of Representatives and Senators hold hands with each other. Sometimes they're at each other's necks. But anyway, a lot of them get along. But on the House of Representatives side, or the House side, the top person is the Speaker of the House. And in most states, the Speaker of the House is chosen by the House of Representative members. So whatever party is in power, by the number of representatives in the House, the Speaker will be of that party. Some speakers, and the Speaker wields tremendous power. They're the ones that will decide whether bills move or not. And so if you've got a speaker that is not like-minded with a bill that you want to move, then it can be an issue. And then underneath the Speaker, it's called the Speaker Pro Tem. This person is also voted on by the representatives, not the public as a whole. And this person's second in charge. And again, wields a lot of power. Then you've got House leadership. And I'm going to show you on the website some of these titles, but the House leadership is voted on by the House of Representative members. And again, they make up the leadership, and they also can be very controlling of the bills that go by. So you always want to know kind of that leadership rank, and at least look at their bios and kind of see where they're coming from. Then you have the committee chairman. The committee chairmen are women, are appointed to the as a committee chair by the Speaker of the House. And they are incredibly powerful. They run the committees. I'm going to spend some time on that. They run the committees. They do the bidding of the Speaker because they're appointed by the Speaker. And so, you know, they can be good. They can be reasonable, but we'll talk a little bit more about them. And then you have the representatives as a whole, all the representatives. And then on the Senate side, it's a little different. The residing officer over the Senate is the lieutenant governor. And in most states, the lieutenant governor is elected by the citizens of the state. So you could have a lieutenant governor that is a Republican, but the Senate is controlled by Democrats because there's more Democrats in the Senate. So it can make for interesting politics if you've got two different parties there with control. But the lieutenant governor is definitely one that they control the agenda of what goes on in the Senate. They're the equivalent of the Speaker of the House, except they're elected by the public. Senate Pro Tem is the same thing on the House. This person resides and sets the rules and the guidelines of how the Senate will run. Senate leadership, same thing. Senate leadership is voted on by the senators, as is the Senator Pro Tem. And so they wield a lot of power. And then you've got your committee chairs and your senators. So they're about the same thing on either side. So what I'm going to do is take that knowledge, and I'm going to actually go out to the Georgia Legislature website. And again, it's going to be every state legislature will have its own website, and they're very similarly structured. Some are a little more sophisticated than others, some are not, but you will find the same things on your state legislature's website. The first thing we're going to look at in a minute is I'm just going to take you out to the House of Representatives so you can see all of the players that I just talked about. Then we'll look at the Senate. Then we'll look at the committees. And then lastly, when we talk about legislation and where to go out and find bills and how you track all of that and how it actually becomes law, then we'll look at that. So if you'll bear with me, let me go out to this. Let me go out here, and if you can, someone can nod if you see the Georgia General Assembly website. Anyone nod yes or no? Yes, Kara, can you see it?
I'm seeing your PowerPoint.
You're seeing my power. Okay, so let me do this. Okay, and share. Now do you see it? It says under the gold dome. Perfect. Okay, so this is the Georgia General Assembly website. And in the PowerPoint, I have your key players. And then I had a place that, because I'm such an educator, I can't get away from it. I gave you some homework to do, and that is to go out and find exactly what I'm going to show you. And so I'm just going to start with the House of Representatives. I'm going to click there, and you can see that there's stuff to link on. But the first thing I had asked you to do is go find out who the Speaker of the House is in your state. And there's the Speaker of the House for Georgia. And I'm going to get one more nod. You all can see this page that says Office of the Speaker. Yes, okay. So this is where you can go out and find out who your speaker is. If you're all new to this, this is what I did. I had a piece of paper. I wrote down who the speaker was, what their party was. I even looked at their biography, see what he was about. Where's he from? These are all people that come from somewhere. And I know that he lives in Georgia. He lives in the North Georgia mountain area. But you'll want to know who the speaker is. Then I'm going to go back out to the representatives, and I am going to go to House leadership. Remember I told you there was this hierarchy of leaders? And this is the House leadership list. Remember I told you there is a Speaker Pro Tem, second in charge in the House, both of these elected by the representatives as a body. And then if I scroll down, you can see these different leaders. So the majority, in Georgia, the majority are Republicans. So in the House of Representatives, there's more Republican representatives, so they control the House. So the majority party will have its leaders. And then you've got majority leader. You've got caucus chairman. A caucus is just all the Republicans or all the Democrats. They just meet together and they call it a caucus. And then, so you've got leaders. And then if I scroll down a little bit, the minority party also has the same leaders. And, believe it or not, the leadership within both parties are very, they really treat each other kindly. You might not be the party in power one day, and there's just a lot of respect, a lot of give and take, between both parties. And so it's an interesting dynamic to watch. And so they have their minority leader, and so they run the minority viewpoint. And so it's all, again, always good to know who they are. And a little tip, and I'll tell you this later, is whenever I went to the Capitol, I had my cell phone, I had these pages bookmarked on my phone, because if I wanted, I always like to, you see them on the website, and then if you see them in person, I always tried to see who they were. And so use your phone to your advantage to match up faces and names after a while. So I always did that. And I'll share some tips on how to lobby one of these legislators. They really are just people. And but it's always good to know if you're going to ask for someone to maybe know what they look like before they come and speak to you. But anyway, that is the House of Representatives, and just one other page. Then all the representatives in the House, they're all listed here too. So I'm not going to scroll down. There's 180 in the Georgia legislature. Most of them you can sort by district or by city. But if I click on Kimberly Alexander, then when I go out, it's going to tell me all about her, where her office is at the Capitol. That's always good to know. I always went in advance knowing the offices, or I used my phone. It told me where she's from, and then the party, what district and the party, and then the town she's from. And so you can look all those up in her email address. So you really make the website your friend and use it. There is a place where you can most legislatures have it where you can download a list of all the legislators into an Excel spreadsheet. I didn't really do that. I used my phone to look things up. So, and then for each representative, the same for the senators, you'll notice that you can see what committees they serve on. So I clicked on committees, and these are the committees that they serve on. And then most legislators like to sponsor, or they want a bill under their leadership. And so if you click on sponsored legislation, it'll tell you what bills that they have actually introduced or that they're signed onto, which I'll explain in a minute. But most state websites, it's a one-stop shop for every legislator. And you probably will never know or get to know all of the legislators very personally with all their information, but you pick and choose which ones, and I'll explain that in a minute. All right, so that's the House of Representatives. The Senate is the exact same thing. The lieutenant governor is going to go off to a different page, but this is the lieutenant governor for Georgia. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, Senate. And you can see that I can then go out to Senate leadership. So notice that the lieutenant governor in Georgia is elected by the citizens of the state, but he heads the Senate. And then you've got the pro tem, and then all the way down. So you have majority leaders, and then scrolling down, you've got the minority leaders, Republican and Democrat. And that tells you that these people were elected by the senators themselves. So they had to actually go out and lobby for votes. And that's who their party cast out as wanting to kind of lead the Senate. And when I mean lead the Senate, they're going to choose which bills they want to come forward. And so if there's not good leadership, then bills that you might like, I might like, or there are some bills that we have in common that we would like to see go through, they could stop them. All right, and then the Senate, all senators is the same way. You have your list of senators, just like the House. So on, it was page 6 of the slides. I encouraged you to go out to your website, legislature's website when you get home, or you are home, I'm sorry, when you have a minute, and just research it and get to know it. That's the best way to kind of learn to navigate your first steps. All right, so let me go back and let me do a new share. And let me keep myself on task. Okay, so we talked about that. All right, there's your homework. All right, let's talk about how a bill becomes law. I'm not going to read this thing, by the way, but what I want to do is use the foundation of this now to help you go through the bill process. And I'm using the girls' sports bill as an example because in Georgia, and there are a lot of states introduced the girls' sports bill this year. And so if this was a bill that you would want to work on, how in the world do you even know in your state legislature where to find anything, where the process is? And so that's what I want to walk you through next. And you've got the slides. I'm going to actually try to go live and walk you through it. But it's very, very simple. A bill has to be introduced. It's got to be written. There's attorneys that write them. It's then given a bill number, and then it's assigned to a committee. The committee votes whether to move the bill out of committee, and it then goes to the floor of the House or the Senate to be voted on. And if it passes out of the House or the floor, it flips over to the next chamber because it's got to go through the House, and then it's got to go through the Senate, or it's got to go through the Senate and to the House before it ever makes it to the governor's desk to become law. And so it's just very process oriented. And honestly, it's not complicated. It's pretty easy for citizens to follow. It's just, they make it complicated. So, all right. So let me take you back out to the website, and I'm going to walk you through, let me share my screen. And let me walk you through how a bill actually becomes a law using the girls' sports bill. Now, let me just get my notes so I keep focused. So the first thing I need to know is, okay, I know a bill has been introduced in my state about the girls' sports bill, but about the girls' sports issue. But I don't know what the bill says. I don't know where it's at. I have no idea. And so there are two ways to look up a bill. One, if you know the bill number, or two, if you know the author, the representative senator who has authored or sponsoring the bill. But if you don't know either one of those pieces, this is what I did. I go out and I Google a news article. Like I didn't know that on the House side, the House bill for the girls' sports bill in Georgia. So I went out and Googled and found a news article that said who the bill sponsor was. And so that sometimes you just kind of do that. If you don't know someone that knows, go look up a news article from the local news. It was in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, so I found it. So this is what I did. I knew I'm going to go to the House of Representatives, and I'm going to go to Representatives, and I know that bill, the girls' sports bill, was sponsored by, I don't think what his name was, Representative Singleton. So I want to go find the bill that he offered. So I'm going to go down, scroll down, and find him alphabetically. Sorry. Here we go. And this is how you would look for a bill if you know the sponsor or the representative or senator. So there you go. There's Philip Singleton. Remember, I told you earlier, every representative and senator, they have sponsored legislation. So you go to his page, click on sponsored legislation. And I just started scrolling down the page till I saw there's always a description for the bill. So you've got the bill number, and then you have a short caption that explains, sometimes not in layman's terms, what it is. And there it is. I found it. It has to do with students competing against, designated for females. So I knew that's what I was looking for. And that's how you find a bill if you know the sponsor's name. And so let's say that, okay, I want to look at the bill. I need to know a little bit more about the bill, which there's another slide that I have, like, well, what do I need to know about the bill? Well, you've got the bill number. The most important thing is what committee it's been assigned to. So this has to do with sports in school. So they put it in the education committee, and the speaker This is the House side. The Speaker assigns bills to committees. If they want a bill to die in committee, they'll sign it to some random committee, or they'll put it in a committee where they will tell the chairman of the committee, don't let the bill move, just let it sit there. And they do that a lot. And so you always want to watch the committee, and then we'll talk about the committee. And then what you want to know is who are the sponsors. And what this means is the House of Representatives member Singleton sponsored this bill. He's presenting it, which means he's going to be responsible for seeing it through, but he wants other representatives to sign on, co-sponsor, to give the bill weight. The more sponsors, the more representatives that put their signature and say, yep, I want that, I like that bill, I'm behind it, the more you have on a bill, the greater chance it's going to go forward. And so I always look at who the bill sponsors are. And this will tell you the top 5 or 7, I think, on this page. And if you, as you get yourself familiar with the state legislature and who these people are, then when I look down this list, I know most of these. I know them, I know kind of their bent, and I know whether they're going to work for it or not. So that is one way to find a bill. The other one, other way, is if you know the bill number. So I'm going to go over to the Senate. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to legislation and laws, and then it's going to allow me to find a bill. So I'm going to go under all legislation, because that you go to legislation and then there's a place that usually, where is the legislation at? So right now, Georgia has 2,100 pages worth of bills listed. And the bill that I am interested in is Senate Bill 266. So you would do bill type, Senate bill, and then 266 and search. And now I have the same information, but this is the Senate version of the girls' sports bill. The bill number, what it's called, the committee, both of them are going, both bills are going through the education and committee route, and then here are the bill sponsors. So that's your kind of the real bare bone basics of just looking up a bill. But where do you go then from there? Well, I want to look at the bill language, and I want to find out a little more about the bill. So I'm going to click on the link for the bill. And what this does, now look at all of the sponsors. This bill had 18 sponsors. There are 56 senators in the Georgia Senate. So that, I don't know, 18 and 18, 6, well, it's not more than half of them, but this senator got a lot of backing for this bill. And so he has a lot of senators there listed, their names are there. And so that's one thing that you want to do. And then what you do is look at the bill language. And if you scroll, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. I go to current version of the bill. And then here is the bill language. Sometimes the bill language is written in layman's terms. This one is very much in layman's terms. If you read down through it, it would make sense to you if you knew about the girls' sports bill. Sometimes they're very technical, and again, they're written by lawyers, and sometimes they're hard to follow, but I always looked at the bill language, and here are a couple tips for you. Any bill that's going to become law, it's either going to add language to what they call code, that's the law in the state. It's either going to add language, or it's going to strike language, or it's going to change language. In this particular case, they are adding, it's underlined. So if language of a bill is underlined, that means to me they are adding brand new language. And in the girls' sports bill, they were adding language to protect girls and equity in the girls' sports realm. So you always look for that. And then this is a really short bill. It's only 2 pages. Some bills are like 50 pages long. But I always look for strike throughs to see what words they're striking out or words that they're adding. And so that is kind of how you read a bill. You can download these. If you're at your state capitol, You can go, they call them the clerk's office, and you can ask them to print off a copy of the bill while you're there. And most of the time it's free. You usually get up to like 25 copies a day, and it's free. Taxpayers are paying for it, but you do get it. You can walk in and ask for a copy of the bill. And every bill has a version. At the top of this bill, you can see the version numbers. When you go into a committee and there's a hearing, they will read off this number to make sure that you know that they're working off the most current version of the bill, and they will always read off that number because the bill line, it can change as it goes through the process. So that's really the big overview on finding a bill, how to find it, kind of how to read it. So now let's kind of continue the process. What happens next? Let me go back to my PowerPoint, and so I can continue to keep this moving. Carrie, you're gonna have to give me the heads up when I get too long. I'm almost done. Okay, been there. All right, more about bills. We talked about bill sponsorship, so I've been through that. Now let's talk about committees, and this kind of wraps things up on that, and then I'll just give you some legislative strategies. The committee assignment for a bill is key. Here's a tip for you. If you want to know when the girls' sports bill is going to be heard in committee, you can look up a couple ways. First of all, you can kind of track it online. Committees meet the same day of the week and the same time and in the same room. They might have 30 committees for the Senate, and so every committee is slotted a time. And so this is in the Education Committee. I knew that on the Senate side, Education Committees happen on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock in a certain room. So you can watch the calendar, which I'll show you, or what I did and what you can do as a citizen is you can call or email the committee chairman's office, and I'll show you where that's at, and tell them, I want to be put on the distribution list for anything that's coming out of the Education Committee. Most states have guidelines that say a committee hearing cannot happen unless you give the public a 24-hour notice. Well, if you're not paying attention to the website, you might miss the committee hearing if something moves fast, if they decide to schedule another one quickly, which they do toward the end of a session, a legislative session. But you get on the distribution list and you get you get updates all the time. That's really key to want to do that. FYI, they do not blind copy. So you're going to see everybody that's on that list, which bugs me. So you might want to pick up a separate email, just a generic Gmail account. If you don't want your regular personal email, because they usually don't blind copy, but it is a great way to keep up. And then finally, you want to attend. You want to attend a committee hearing, and let's talk really quick about that. So let me go back over really quick. Yes.
Thank you. Now in California, I've plugged in
Sorry,
on our.
Alice, if it's okay, let's just have Tanya finish, and then we'll have Q&A.
Yeah.
We're going to turn off the recording for the Q&A session, but we're recording.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and have Tanya complete her presentation.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can afterwards. All right, so let me go back out here and let's talk really quickly about committees. So I'm going to go back out to the General Assembly website and I'm going to get myself out of here. So let's pretend we're still working on the sports bill on the Senate side. And notice I'll go to Senate, and the Senate has their committees. And here is the list. Look at all the committees. That bill is in the Education and Youth Committee. When I click on that committee, it will tell me all of the senators that serve on the committee, and it will tell me who the chairman is. Now, for the girls' sports bill in Georgia in the Senate, this guy's a friendly guy. He would want to give equity to girls in sports, and they moved because of that, he had the power to bring the bill forward and to give it a hearing for the hopes that in the bill process, it would be voted out and go to the Senate floor for an opportunity to be voted on by the Senate and then flip it over to the House to go through the same process. But it's always important to know who's on the committee, because if you're going to lobby to get it out of committee, you're going to reach out to these members of the committee and ask them to vote a certain way. So the bare bone basics of lobbying is you got to lobby committee members, and it's not a hard thing to do, but that's your committee structure on that. All right, so let me go back over here and let me wrap this up. All right, why attend a committee hearing? Because anybody that's a public citizen in the state has a right to be in a hearing and hear what's being discussed that could impact you as an individual in your state should that bill become eventually law. So here's my recommendations on attending a committee hearing. First of all, yes, they happen during the day. So when I first started dabbling and going to the Capitol, I worked full time. So I would take a personal day. I didn't ever take a vacation day. I mean, I didn't ever take, I always took a personal day because then you don't have to answer for it, or a vacation day. I never took a sick day, but I took a personal day. And I went down and I went to committee hearings for the sole purpose of learning. I wasn't trying to do anything. I wasn't trying to lobby. I wasn't trying to impact. I just went to learn. And so you can find out on the legislature's website when that committee is going to be meeting. You just look for the committee and they'll give you the schedule. But go and research how committees work. And then if you don't know, you can read it online. How does a state legislators committee work? You can Google it and find it. I recommend, if you're not familiar with Robert's Rules of Order, it is the governance of how committees are run. It's how motions are made in committees. And so when you go and sit in and just watch a committee, if you've been to any sort of committee, you'll hear kind of terminology used on how committees run. And so I always think it's worth kind of knowing, maybe getting a Robert's Rules of Order 101 and just kind of learning some of the terminology on how motions are made. You could actually watch it online. They do broadcast online if you didn't want to go down right away. But then attend in person and just sit there and watch. Watch the chairman, watch how they interact, how the committee interacts. They sit there, they act like you're not even there because they talk among themselves, and then there's an audience out there. And so they're talking among themselves. People can come in and testify. That's something I recommend that you do. And public citizens can come in and testify. You don't have to belong to an organization or a group. A lot of times organizations, groups, lobbyists, will lobby on behalf of their organization. Look for the power people. And what I mean by this is a lot of times you know who your opponents are on the issue. So you might look for different organizations there, different lobbyists there. But you go there long enough, you just sit and watch the people in the audience. And then watch how they interact. Here was a tip that a state senator gave a long time ago. She served on the Health and Human Services Committee. She was the chairman. And again, they meet every week. She said for the first 3 weeks, she sits and observes everybody that's just sitting out where the public can come in and sit. And it's like a hearing room in a courtroom. And she would observe, and if she saw people coming consistently, she would begin asking people, who are they? Because if they're showing up consistently, then they're interested in what's going on with Health and Human Services. And so don't think that showing up and having a presence there doesn't count for anything, because they observe people that come and they listen to people give their points of view if you testify. If your representative happens to be on the committee, introduce yourself. Okay, do I need to wrap up, Kara?
Yeah, I think we have a few more minutes and then I
Okay.
think we'll open it up to Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so my last tip that I'll give out, and you have some of my lobbying strategies in the PowerPoint, is consider testifying. What does that mean? Going and giving your point of view. I want the girls' sports bill to pass because someone in my family is being impacted by this. Research the issue. I put down here, avoid hysteria or emotions. I'm sorry, ladies, but sometimes as women, we kind of get couched sometimes as, you know, oh, being emotional or whatever. So it's always great to try to avoid any sort of raising of your voice, kind of playing into that stereotype. Not everyone thinks that way, but that's kind of where I'm going with that. Stay even keeled, speak to the issue, give your 2 cents. Most of the time they give you about 2 minutes to speak, but you will learn how to testify by just observing committees, just watching how people do it. You go with your notes and you impact. So with that, Kara, I'm going to end on building relationships. You should build a relationship with your representative and your senator at the state level, whether they are in the same party of you or not, because they do represent you and you have a right to be heard by the people that represent you. Do it in a cordial fashion, build the relationship. So when you really want to ask them to do something the right way, they know who you are. So I highly, and how do you do that? Pick up the phone, ask if you can have a meeting, take a friend and say, I'm so-and-so, I'm a constituent. Believe it or not, at the state level, they actually will meet with their constituents. And that would probably be the biggest thing. And committee chairman, if you happen to know them or know someone that knows them, build relationships by showing up at the Capitol, introducing yourself. There's ways that you do it at your state Capitol. I can't express enough or underestimate enough that if you want to run a marathon, build healthy relationships with the legislators, whether they agree with you or not. You just never know when you can change their mind, and you do it by being kind and respectful, and they will do that in turn, and it pays dividends. And so that's about the last thing I'll leave you with, and I can open it up for questions, and you all can read some of my strategies that I've given at the end. But hopefully this has been helpful, just to kind of give you the nuts and bolts of just getting started. And so, Carol, I will be quiet and be happy to take any questions, and hopefully I can answer them.
That was really great, Tanya. Thank you so much. And depending on how many questions there are, I think it would be great if we have time to go through some of those final slides on strategy. I just want to give everyone a chance to ask questions.
Okay.
And I also just want to emphasize, I really feel like the last thing that you said, Tanya, is so important, that often we don't understand that our representatives are our representatives, even if they're in a different party, and building those collegial, professional, friendly relationships cross party lines is critical, I think, ultimately to the functioning of our democracy. So I just want to thank you, Tanya, for saying that. Okay, if we have time, I'd love to go back to those strategy slides, but I know, for example, Alice had a question about California, and then maybe Tanya, if you could stop your screen share, it'll be easier.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I can see hands, I can see faces and hands, and if women know how to raise your hand virtually, I will do my best to keep a queue. So Alice, did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
I'm sorry, Carol, weren't you going to turn off the recording for Q&A?
Thank you, Carrie, for that reminder. I'm doing that right now.
Very good.
Know your opposition, know how they think. Visit their website, see what they're saying about your bill, and again, know them. Know your issue. I know that seems kind of doesn't make sense, but you need to know your issue. This is why I'm a big proponent of not taking on a lot of issues. Become an expert in the one issue or two issues that you care about, and know it, study it, understand it. Believe it or not, if you come across as a really, really good expert on something and you go to your legislator and they might be on your side, honestly, I don't know if they're on your side, you might end up becoming a resource for them. At the state level, legislators, they don't have like all these people to help them. Unless you're like the speaker, you might have your legislative aides, but the rest of them, they don't have time in the day to read a bill sometimes. And so you could make yourself the issue expert and you could be their resource, giving them information. And I know, but it's because you know something about it. Provide talking points on the issue. One of the strategies that I always used for my organization is whenever I was lobbying, I had my talking points obviously on letterhead with our logo, because I wanted them to see that logo and know who it was. Everything I did had our logo on it. And so I would provide talking points. In Georgia, and it's typical a lot with the other state capitals, you show up, COVID plays an issue, but when you show up to the Capitol, you can just pull a legislator aside. If they're in having their session with everybody, you can pull them out and talk with them. There's a technique usually that they have guidelines of being able to pull out a legislator and lobby them. And so you always have some talking points. Never go unprepared. And talking points need to be 1 or 2 pages. They need to be bullet points because people don't read more than 144 characters these days. And I think they need to be researched. Legislators don't want feelings. They don't want to know how you feel. They want to know facts. They want to know the science of it all. They want to know all of that. And so just, make sure they're well researched. This follow through on each point of contact, if you happen to go to a political party breakfast and you run into your legislator, or you run into another legislator and you happen to know they're on that committee, and you strike up a conversation and you say, I would love to provide you more information on this issue. Can I follow up with you or your office typically? Sure, do it. Always follow through on your points of contact. If you run into your legislator and they give you a lot of time, send them a thank you note. I come from the era where we wrote thank you notes. And drop them a note. That personal touch goes a whole long way. I'm all about that personal touch because people like to be treated kindly, and they will remember you if you treat them kindly. Be honest and accurate in your reporting. In other words, don't throw out a number. 75% of the people say, and you can't support that, you've got egg on your face. In my organization, my CEO, Penny Nance, anytime we put out talking points and there's a number on it, it has to be sourced. There's a link to it. It's either footnoted or, like she said, I am not going to go on the news or be interviewed, and I throw out this data point that you've given me, and then the reporter says, well, where did you get that number? And so we have to be very careful on always being able to back up our numbers, and you should be the same way. Always have that, and just be fair, about it on it. Keep in touch with various coalitions. I mentioned that earlier. That's great. And you know what? Some coalitions, you might not even agree with them on anything else, but you agree with them on one issue, and that's fine. You're there for that one singular issue. Figure out who those are. Know the process, and know the bill, how a bill becomes a law. If you go to a committee hearing, I remember going to one, and again, they all run on this Robert's Rules of Order, like, raise your hand. You don't raise your hand and ask a question. You I don't even know the terms anymore, but you have to ask a particular way, like, Chairman, I want to make a call on the floor or something like that. So if you know the process and know Robert's Rules of Orders, you're probably 5 steps ahead of the average person, and they respect you for that. And again, we all have to learn, and and you might not do it right the first time. I certainly didn't. Be committed to your cause. You're in it for the long haul. Don't be a flash in the pan. If you show up year after year, month after month, they're going to remember you. And honestly, legislation takes forever sometimes. Sometimes it takes a couple years. And so just be committed to it and follow it through. And the last one is avoiding personal attacks. And I'm going to give you my example. I worked on an education issue, and it was hot back. It was hot back in about 5 years ago. It was the hot topic of the day. And I sent out an email from CWA of Georgia, and I put the pictures of the committee members. It was the education committee, and I felt what they did and their vote was wrong. So I called them out, which is okay as long as you're calling them out on the way they voted, but I put their pictures up there. And I will say, when you put pictures up, sometimes that gets personal. For them, it gets personal. But I was also wrong on my reporting. And I knew I was wrong because the state senator who was sponsoring the bill called me and said, Tanya, that email wasn't right. Oh my gosh, I had to eat crow. But the problem was I pounded that email alert out in my irritation and frustration, and threw those pictures of those legislators up there when that really wasn't necessary. And it was perceived as just going too personal from legislators that actually didn't like what they did either. So one of those legislators ended up being the lieutenant governor's public policy person. And so when I had to go and get a meeting with the lieutenant governor, there I was in front of him. And I apologized. I said, all those years ago, I said, this has always bothered me. Of course, he said, I didn't remember that, but I did, because I was called on the carpet. And so I learned from that point on that you don't get personal. Social media, the legislators watch social media. They take everything personally, by the way. If you just don't like the way they voted, you can say, I don't like the way they voted. They still take it personally. However, they do watch social media and they pay attention to it. And so just avoid the personal attacks. I regretted that. And how long it took me forever to regain a relationship with some of those legislators on the education committee. I think they ran in the opposite direction sometimes. They saw me. But anyway, that's just one of those school of hard knocks that, oh boy. And then I had a couple other, policy and not personal. And then don't engage in mudslinging. Stay out of the fray. If they're going, tit for tat on social media, don't do it. Don't get in the mud with them. And stay above the fray, because you'll be respected in the long run. And sometimes it's the long run. I had a hard time sometimes staying above the fray. But on any of these issues are very emotional sometimes for us, and we invest a lot of time. And so that is it. And I think that's all I had, Kara.
Tanya, thank you so much. That's a great way to end. And of course, that really is a great way to end. Of course, we always have to remember that we need to hold ourselves with integrity. We need to hold ourselves with character and professionalism. And so, Tanya, I really appreciate your spending your time with us tonight and sharing these insights. It's been really, really wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope it was worth your time.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now.
Okay.